Hi, I'm Chris Spivey, and as many of you know, I'm very passionate about fixing the problem that 7 out of 10 IT projects fail. I've come across a guy here by the name of Chris White who shares that passion, and what I wanted to do today was have a discussion about some of the things that go wrong with projects and some of the solutions. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Sure, thank you for having me, Chris. I do share a passion with you. My experience is primarily in defense, and yours is in IT, so it's going to be interesting to see how some of these stories correlate.
Yeah, I think we'll be able to provide a lot of value to the folks that are listening. One of the challenges that I've had as a project manager is within tool sets. A lot of times I'll be putting out a project plan and the numbers just don't work out right. What you've been able to help me understand, to begin to understand, and what I'd like you to be able to help the audience understand is what's going on there.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. We've got a lot of great project managers out there, and they really have the best intentions in mind and really trying to do everything right. But I got to admit, some of the tools that are out there are very insufficient and quite limited as far as their capabilities, and unfortunately can actually give misleading answers at times, and so that's probably some of what you're seeing.
Yeah, I've been on the end of that. And I've been on both ends of that, actually, as a project manager trying to lay out a project plan that's realistic, and as a project sponsor, not being able to trust the numbers that come out and the budget and the duration of a plan from a project manager. So if you would, help us understand, we've got PERT and CPM as a methodology and the dynamic progress method. Could you help us understand a little bit about the interplay of both of those and how they work and how they don't work?
Okay, I'll back up and give a little bit of history about PERT and CPM. CPM, critical path method, was actually invented back in the 1950s on a Navy, the Polaris submarine missile program. So it's been around quite a while. And it was a very simple method. It was a great improvement at the time, but very simplistic, so that people would be able to actually use pencil and paper if needed. The computers back then didn't even have the power that our cell phones have today. So you had that going on. So as a backup, you had to be able to do it pencil and paper. PERT was created in the commercial environment around the same time, and they're sometimes played together, PERT, CPM, CPM, PERT. But they suffer from a couple of flaws.
Okay.
And the first one, I'm sure you'll notice, is that the duration for any task is an input.
Right.
That's what it primarily drives off of. Is saying, the task one takes 10 days or whatever, and then critical path method is trying to look at that and see where there's float or slack. And the thing that's misleading with that is that in the real world, the duration for a task is actually an output. I don't know how long it took until I finished it. Of course, that makes sense, but if you estimate using these durations, it's very easy, and again, misleading. The tools give you a sense of control and understanding. I can start with this date, the boss tells me start on this date, end on this date, and I draw a Gantt chart that matches, and it may or may not be realistic at all. So one of the things the dynamic progress method does is flips that around and focuses more on the resource side of it, and duration is an output based on the usage of resources.
And I would guess there's some variability of the capability of a resource. I've seen a number of times where I've had a programmer who can work at this speed, or I've got a programmer that can work at this speed, or it may vary on the amount of time that they're working.
Right.
At least in IT, a lot of the IT folks like to burn the midnight oil and are more productive when they're doing that versus different times. How does that play into the methods?
That's a very good question, and what you have, you're absolutely right. There are differences in what we would call productivity or effectiveness of resources. For a certain kind of task, you just may be better than me, or a junior level engineer or a programmer is not quite as capable as a senior level person. So you have differences like that. In addition, as we know, you burn the midnight oil, you work really hard, and you get fatigued or burned out, and not quite, if I do that for a few weeks, I'm not quite as productive or as effective as I was when I first started doing that. Or if you throw too many people at a job and you got overmanning or overcrowding or whatever term you want to use.
In IT, it's the mythical man month, and the other analogy is 9 women can't have a baby in a month.
Exactly. There may be some optimal number of people, and beyond that, it's less productive. Below that, it's less productive. And so one of the things that's missing with the CPM and PERT approaches is that productivity is not considered at all. All resources are considered equal, but many times someone creates a plan with kind of the creme de la creme people in mind,
Right.
and then when 6 months later they get the project, they've got people right out of school or new people, and just because of differences in productivity.
Well, the other thing that I've seen come in is learning curves. Somebody gets reassigned during a project. So what you're saying is you've got the ability to put those kind of concepts into this tool and model them and be able to come up with a more realistic portrayal of what it's going to take to do this project?
Absolutely. All those considerations are now incorporated, so we know they happen in the real world, and now you have a method with the dynamic progress method, and with PIM-BLOCS, our tool, you have a way to capture that and now see the impact of it.
What are some of the other benefits of the PIM-BLOCS tool set?
Well, one of the other flaws with the current PERT and CPM methods are that the reaction of managers, the corrective actions, are not included. But in the real world, you start a project and immediately there's some budget or schedule considerations, or we're behind schedule.
The CFO comes in and says, hey, if I gave you 2 more resources, could you have this done in a month? Or guess what, you're losing 2 resources. Can you still have it done within the time frame that you have? You're talking about those kind of scenarios?
Exactly, and usually it's the latter, right? We'd all love for someone to come and say you got 2 additional resources, but usually
Yeah, that happened once.
out of how many?
Yeah.
So usually have a situation where you gave them, you said it's going to take 12 months, and they said we need it in 10, or I need this many people to make it in 12 months. Well, no, you got this many people. So,
And oh, by the way, do it anyway.
yeah, and oh, by the way, do it anyway.
And be nice to your people, don't overwork them.
Exactly, all that. And so what you now have is a method that incorporates how managers, the actual project management part of it, we can simulate, where you put preferences for how you would react to being behind schedule or over budget. Would you add more resources, take resources away, work people overtime or not? And now all those productivity impacts are being pulled in. So under the conditions that those happen, you now have the productivity impacts. So you can see the new schedule or the new cost or the combination of both, or the manpower plan that now incorporates those productivity losses in there.
Well, I want to thank you for making some time and helping us start to understand that. What if somebody wants to know more? What can they do?
Well, we've got 2 websites. There's www.pimblox.com, PMBLOX.com. That's the tool. And then we've also started a site, www.dynamicprogressmethod.com, which is more the academic side of introducing this concept and how it's an evolution beyond the critical path method, and trying to get some understanding going there, and trying to get some traction there. So I'm glad to hear not glad to hear, I guess, but similar problems. What we see in defense is often what happens in IT as well. And so it's good to know there may be a possible solution here.
Yeah, and I appreciate you making the time and sharing that and helping evangelize higher quality projects.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
You're welcome.